Who says you have to be classically educated to appreciate classical music? One particular 3-year-old heard a violin playing on a kitchen radio in his home in Israel, and Itzhak Perlman's lifelong devotion to music of all kinds commenced. Currently, he's performing with the Israel Philharmonic Orchestra at Carnegie Hall, and you may have heard him playing the haunting violin solo in the score for Schindler's List. So I'm very pleased to have him here now. Welcome.
Thank you.
You and Zubin together with the Israel Philharmonic at Carnegie Hall?
Yes.
Is this some anniversary or?
No. This is a tour of the Israel Philharmonic. They're coming here for a short tour. They're playing a couple of concerts in New York and one in Washington. And then, of course, they're going back to Europe to do some
Tell me before we begin about the relationship between you and Mickey Zuckerman and Daniel Barenboim.
Well, obviously, we're all
Because
Israelis.
Daniel Barenboim was here the other day. And,
Yes, I saw it.
And
I
I
saw the
said to him
show.
something
I saw
like,
the
they
show.
call it the Barenboim Gang. And,
Yes.
and he said, I've heard that before, but I don't really like to think of it that way.
Well,
But there must be
neither do
something
I.
that binds the...
Well, we happen to be friendly.
Yeah.
Obviously, language has something to do with it. You
Yes.
know? I mean, there's nothing like, you talk to each other and so on, but you refer to the Hebrew, and there's kind of a special bond, obviously. The thing is that we've been brought up sort of in the same general area in Israel, in the Tel Aviv area. As a matter of fact, Barenboim used to come on my block where I used to live. We weren't really talking at that time because he was when he was like, I don't know, 12, 13, 14 years old, he was already a full-fledged pianist and kind of a wonderkind even earlier than that. But of course, I've heard of him, and he was a legend already in Israel at that time. But then later on in the United States, when I came in the early '60s, late '50s, that's when I saw him again, early '60s, and of course Zuckerman the same way. And again, when you are very young, the age difference makes a big impact. If I was 12, he was 9. He's a baby. If you're 12 and somebody else is 9, forget
Seems
about
like
it. Today,
forever, doesn't it?
3 years is nothing.
Within 15 years, you say, well, he's about
Nothing.
my age.
And the same thing with Barenboim. He is, a few years older than I am. But when you are younger, then that's a big difference again.
He said something on the show, and then I read that you had said something similar, which is this passion or this great love of chamber music.
Well, we have the same writer, so
you compare notes, right?
Yes.
You watch him, he watches you, and you figure out what each other's saying. What is it about chamber music for great musicians?
Well, the only thing that I could offhand compare it is to a movie actor to go to the theater, as opposed to the film. It probably is not an exact comparison, but I cannot forget the first time that I had an experience playing chamber music. I was about 14 years old, and I just could not believe my ears, because there is a certain skeletal quality where every note really is important. I mean, there's no hiding behind instrumentation. You're just listening to the pure intent of the composer. And for me, especially in the, when you talk about Mozart, Haydn, Beethoven, Brahms, and so on, the Germans, and of course later on, that's what they really wrote. I think they're almost their best stuff. It's there's nothing more profound for me, let's say, as a late Beethoven quartet, or more wonderful and pretty and just absolutely sublime than a Mozart quartet or any of the chamber music of Brahms. There's nothing more heart-quenching and romantic and melodically satisfying than a Brahms quintet, something like that. So a lot of the chamber music experience is not only just with the music, but of course it has to do with who you're playing with and your friend. And of course, when you are friends and then you play the music together, for me, that's sort of a complete relationship. You have the musical relationship, and of course you have, when I play, let's say with Daniel or with Zuckerman or with other people that I've known when I was a student at Juilliard, let's say, history, a lot of history comes through the music. I mean, like we've played, there's certain things that I've played when I was 15, 16, and 17. I used to play chamber music very, very often, almost every weekend, get together and do some music. And now when we repeat it, we still remember that spot where we used to play it the same way. And if sometimes we play it the same way today, 25 years later, and we sort of wink at each other, and you say, oh, that was that great spot. Wonderful experience.
Wynton Marsalis was here the other night, and he was talking about how he doesn't even like to take vacations. And even if he's on a vacation, he wants to be able to play. He'll go anywhere if he finds out there's some musical group. And Tony Bennett was here as well. Do you find that true? Are you going to pick up the violin almost every day?
Not necessarily.
No, you don't. You can go on a vacation without
one. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. In fact,
I can go. Yes, yeah. I can go on vacation. But I was, I don't have any sort of intense need after a while. After a while, I probably would. But I could go for a couple of weeks and just not touch
leave it. Not touch
I could do that.
Tell me about interpretation, because we had that quote about the violin that you saw there. Interpretation and process of interpreting a composer's intent.
Well, it's a very you've hit up on basically the goal generally in a career, and what do you do? What do you do this year? What do you do next year? Considering that you're playing exactly the same pieces, especially for violinists, we don't have. Our repertoire is relatively small if you were compared to
some Brahms,
I mean the known ones. Yeah. And a lot of people ask me, for example, what do you do with the Beethoven concerto that you haven't already done?
Yeah.
And I find that it's really, with me, it's a kind of hopefully a natural growing process. And when somebody says to me, well, what did you do with this piece differently 20 years ago? I don't really know exactly what I did differently, but I know that my outlook on music is different. It's a very subtle kind of difference.
So we could listen to the piece 10 years ago probably and listen to you do the same thing tonight, and it would be different.
Absolutely.
Because you've grown as a musician, and you've grown in your understanding of the composer.
It would not be like, that spot is doing different. It would be just the whole outlook on the piece.
Would the sound be different?
Maybe. Yeah. Maybe the sound would be different, but the kind of interpretation of rhythm, let's say, interpretation of pacing, how do you build the phrase, which are little things that you can't say, well, in 1964 I did it this way and today I do it that way. Maybe it's true, but it's a very subtle kind of difference, and it's not like I wake up one day and I say, well, today I'm turning a new leaf, I'm going to play these pieces differently.
It's an evolution.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
What was the genius of Heifetz?
Well, if I knew...
You'd get some.
Well, first of all, he was a pioneer of modern violin playing as we know it today. I'm not talking so much pure music. I'm just talking about approach and virtuoso playing. What do you call it? I mean, you can hear, let's say, three violinists play. Violinist A, violinist B, and violinist C. And you can hear him play, let's say, a very, very complicated and difficult piece. And each one would play it perfectly and beautifully with good sound, but yet only one, you would think that this is the most earth-shattering experience you've ever heard. And that would be a Heifetz. Yeah. Because of the, there's another way of calling it, old-time, big-time fiddle playing, not just, professional fiddle playing, but big-time, old-fashioned, great big-time tradition violin playing, which, of course, he was the originator of, if you would like. I know there was Chrysler before, which was absolutely one of the great loves that I've had and so on. But Heifetz gave something, I don't know, I was found a kind of a brilliance and an edge that was so incredible. It was devastating to hear him play. And even today, I mean, the more I hear him today as I get older, the more I appreciate what he did. And a lot of people, I remember I was fortunate enough to visit him in Los Angeles several times. Every time I would go, I would call him up. And I would say to him, I said, you have been the curse of many violin students. He says, why, what do you mean? I said, because a lot of people try to imitate you, and of course, there's no way you can do it. Yeah. You cannot do that. Yeah.
And I assume that even in something like classical music and being a violin virtuoso, there is something to be said for uniqueness.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, and in terms of even personality, I mean, not only, but in the whole, clearly there is an interpretation, an insight into interpretation. Clearly there is, but...
Well, the uniqueness, I find, is so important. I mean, for me, any player, it's like a fingerprint. Yeah. I mean, you can have 5, 6 hands, and they all look the same, but there's a different fingerprint. And with violins, you know, when I think of the violinists of the past, and you think about what they call the Our School and the school of that time, and the people that came out of it, everybody, not one person sounded the same. Not one. You talk about Elman, you talk about Heifetz, you talk about Milstein, and then a little bit later, Oistrakh and Stern and Francescatti, Chrysler, not one person. Everybody a unique kind of musical personality.
Who's had the most influence on you?
A lot. All of them.
All of them.
You know,
Isaac,
as I was going,
Isaac Stern, and
absolutely.
Milstein has...
You see what I would used to do? I used to go through periods in Juilliard where I would have like 6 months where there was only one violinist for me, and that was it. And then there was another 3 months, and that was the next one, and so on. And of course, in each period, you try to imitate that person. And then hopefully you get rid of that, and something positive stays within you.
And, that,
you know?
and the way the way you absorb it makes your own uniqueness too.
Absolutely.
Here is you in Russia. Perlman live in Russia. Take a listen. Bit about something else you have done, Schindler's List. How were you selected? What was the process of Steven Spielberg selecting you?
Well, I don't know the exact process. All I know is that I received a call from John Williams, who wrote the music, and he says, Itzhak, I have this
John
film,
Williams used to be with the Boston Pops.
Yes, and of course he's a marvelous composer, and
he's done a lot of
he's
scores.
done a lot of scores for the movies. And he says, I'm doing this wonderful movie with Steven Spielberg, which I've heard already about, Schindler's List. And he says, and there is room there for, there is a part where I envision some violin. He says, would you like to do it? And it really wasn't a very difficult decision for me because of the subject matter and so on. And I'm so happy I had the opportunity. I went... we did it with the Boston Symphony, the part that I did, and Steven Spielberg was present throughout the entire recording of the music of that, and I was very, very impressed. You know, he was just his stamp is on everything in that movie,
including the music,
and that
how was his
absolutely
stamp
fabulous.
Expressed in terms of the music?
Well, he would first of all just being there and really listening to it. And saying, well, he made a few comments here and there, this should be moved a few seconds later, because we're looking at the pictures and when does the music start and so on. He had a lot to do with that. And if you see the movie, you will see how wonderfully the music is used. It's never overused or underused. It's used it's just right. Everything is just right.
Is it the first time you have done this?
Yes, absolutely. I've never done it before.
And you sit there and you play as you watch I've seen orchestras and you play and they have the film running
exactly.
on the screen.
What they did is the particular scenes in which the violin has stuff in it was shown to me ahead of time, and then they have little blips, which are time blips on the screen. You see little white circles that come in every few seconds, so that then you can basically get the general tempo of the music. And so we did that at rehearsal, and of course, John had this big little monitor. As he was conducting, he was basically setting up the tempo, and after a while, I just didn't have to even, look at him because I knew more or less what the mood would be and what the tempo, and I was very happy with what came out.
And the film?
Oh, the film is just. Have you seen?
Yes.
You've seen the
film?
Yes. Well, it's just.
It's extraordinary.
Wonderful. It's a wonderful film, and the thing is that it's very easy in a film like that, at least in my mind, to fall into many, many traps, and which I don't think he's falling into. And the fact that it's black and white and it has a certain kind of mood, and just as a film, it's wonderful. Of course, forget about the subject matter, and the performances.
And the performances by the principal.
And I love the music.
Yes. Well, not only that, the music, I'm sure you did. The music is, there's a cassette out and a CD out now. And I see frequent references to it. I don't know whether it's doing well.
Yes, it's wonderful. It's wonderful, wonderful music. John, what fascinated me is that John does not have a background in what you would call traditional Jewish music. And he was actually explaining to me, he says, I don't know, he said, Stephen said that I should do this, and I don't know if I can really do a good job. And he did such a fabulous job, and obviously did a lot of homework, and then he was able to just get into the kind of Yiddishkeit of flavor of the music so beautifully, so beautifully.
Am I right, and I may be way off base on this, but I remember somewhere in the recesses of my mind that there were some extraordinary musicians who were in the concentration camps and died in the concentration camps.
Yes, Theresienstadt.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. There's some composers, so there is a lot of chamber music that was written from one of those camps. Yeah. Absolutely, yes. It was a sort of a, I'm not quite sure about it, but it was, I think, a model camp that the Nazis used to show that there's artistic things going on. It's not just a horrible camp and stuff like that. So there is definitely that music from there.
Now, is any of that being performed by the Israeli Philharmonic?
No. The Israeli Philharmonic is here basically on a short tour, and of course there's always
and Zubin is conducting.
Zubin is conducting, and we are this orchestra, as you know, is probably one of the great reasons for it is it's an ambassador. It's an Israeli. It's our best ambassador, and so the orchestra always tours about. And whenever I'm available, I always get the telephone call. We need you, and so on. So I'm doing it with them. I'm very excited. We have a gala. That's Thursday. I don't know when this thing is going to be shown, but
tonight.
Tonight. All right. Thursday. Then Thursday. Thursday is the big gala at Carnegie Hall.
Yeah. Tell me about education and how you feel about music being taught to kids today. And
I don't feel very good about it.
I know you don't. That's why I'm asking. You think what?
Well, I think that this again. I always say this. It's a much wider problem than just music education. I think it's an educational problem. Period. Yeah. And of course, music is the most severe. What's the word?
Discipline.
It's music suffers.
Yes.
And especially musical education suffers a lot. And the reason that it suffers is because there is not enough imagination in the curriculum. For me, I have 5 children, and so I've had the experience of children. And I'm not talking about music schools. Yeah. I'm talking about private schools. I'm talking about public schools. Just generally, what the kind of teaching that goes on in music really lacks a kind of imagination. Let me give you an example. There is never in the, a 5-year-old kid or a 6-year-old kid or 7, 8, until 15 or 16, if they go to a public school, they don't have the experience of listening or experiencing the greatness of Beethoven or the greatness of Mozart, the greatness of Bach, I go to a school and I've got they talk about curriculum and they say, well, we're going to have next year a program where every child has the chance of studying a musical instrument. We're going to give violin or cello, whatever. And at the end of the semester, they will able to actually play Twinkle, Twinkle, reading the music by heart. You need that?
No.
I mean, you don't need that. I mean, instead of that, how about, we're going to have a sort of a survey of what went on when Mozart wrote one of his symphonies, and what went on, and what kind of a character Mozart was, or what kind of a character was Bach, some of his personal life, or, I'm talking about real...
in order to engender an appetite.
I'm not saying the other one is bad. I'm just saying there's nothing else. I'm saying, I watch kids playing bells in the school, going like that, and that's the extent of the education that they're getting, or singing, It's not enough.
Is it different in Europe? Is it different in Asia?
I wouldn't know. I don't know.
Is it different in Israel?
But the thing about Europe, the thing about Europe is that Europe has got already a steeped in tradition of what happened before. You know, you see a lot of kids going to concerts, little kids, 5, 6-year-olds. As a matter of fact, one of the things that I'm very happy about what's going on in the States is that I see many more kids going to my concerts. Now, I don't know whether this has to do with education or it has to do with the fact that they've seen me on Sesame Street.
Or maybe it's a little maybe they've seen you on Letterman.
Yeah. But maybe it's a little bit of both. But whenever I see young kids going to concerts, I'm very happy with that. But I think that it's not supported enough in the schools and sometimes not in the homes, you know.
In Japan, is there, I understand there's a real appreciation in Asia, and I'm thinking of Japan, particularly classical music.
Yes, absolutely. Well, the pendulum is sort of swung all the way to the Far East. There's an awful lot of appreciation there, and a lot of kids are very, very involved. You know, of course, a lot through Suzuki, and you know, which we know, and that is also happening in the United States. But again, we're talking about just specialized education. What I would like to see more is that the music should become a better, a more successful subject in the general education of kids in this country.
Is there anything you've wanted to do, and I'm not speaking to the fact that you had polio and the disability, but is there anything you've wanted to do musically that you haven't been able to do? I mean, generally, is anything, because you have never wanted to be a conductor.
Right. Well, that had nothing to do with my disability.
No, I'm not speaking to the disability.
I'm saying, luckily, I'm probably I'm a terrible pianist, so luckily that would have stopped me. Because using the pedals, I can't do that. Thank God I don't have to do that.
You selected the right
selected the right instrument not to be good at.
Why don't you want to be a conductor?
I don't know. I feel that I'm very happy with what I'm doing musically as a violinist, and I feel that I can keep doing much more and keep growing musically. And I feel that if I were...
Is the rate of growth continuing? I mean, is your learning curve still up? Because when you're dealing with the likes of a genius of Mozart and Mendelssohn and Beethoven and Brahms,
the rate of growth constantly goes up. Has to grow up because otherwise you stop. And if you stop, you go down.
Okay, but I could level off a little bit. No such thing. The curve could not be straight up.
There is no such thing as leveling off. I mean, I don't think.
In your business, how important is personality, and in terms of
when you say in my business, you're talking about
your
performance.
Profession, yeah. No, I mean in terms of being a world-class musician.
Well, I think personality, you want to call it personality or you want to call it charisma, whichever you want to call it, is extremely important.
It's there.
And it has to be there. It's not taught. It's a part, for me, I mean, at least my opinion, this is a part of your character.
Yeah.
And when you go out on the stage, it's not like somebody's standing you're not standing in front of a mirror and you say, okay, now let's see what kind of an aura I want to present to the audience. It's there. It's either there or it's not there.
Either they like your personality or they like your essence and your
and the thing is that personalities and charisma are not necessarily that exuberant and enthusiastic. I've seen people go on a stage who kind of very shy looking and subdued and so on, and it still exudes a kind of a charisma. A charisma is not like, oh, it's not one of those things. You know, it can be anything. A charisma is not, there's no real definite recipe for charisma. It's something that has many different flavors.
Yeah. It's always a pleasure to see you. I thank you for coming by.
Thank you.
Tzad Perlman, the Israeli Philharmonic, are they still at Carnegie Hall?
Yeah, they're at Carnegie Hall. They're doing 2 performances at Carnegie Hall.
And then are doing around the country?
They're actually going to Washington. Yeah. And that's it. It's a small tour. And then they're going back to Spain. And then they're coming back this summer.
Yeah. Do you enjoy recitals?
Yeah, I love recitals. Yeah. Yes. I mean, I like. Well, recitals give you a chance to develop the program throughout an evening, which is very nice.
Great to see you.
Nice to see you
very much. Thank you for being with us this evening. We look forward to seeing you again next time. Take care.